7 times Prime Minister of Italy, 8 times Minister of Defence, 5 times Foreign Minister. He's sat in the Italian Parliament non-stop since 1948 for the Christian Democrats and since 1991 as a senator for life. Giulio Andreotti has seen it all in Italian and European politics, been mixed up in numerous scandals, accused of mafia membership, even seen his life made into a film. For the last 17 years he's had no governmental role, but he remains hugely influential.
Senator,
you and all of Europe's founding fathers worked tirelessly to create today's European Union. But for Europe's citizens, this idea is unimportant. Is that their fault, or you and your colleagues?
Forse direi il cambiamento dall'autarchia.
Maybe the transition from being a small, autonomous union to one almost without limits was so enormous that it probably should have been carried out in smaller steps. But at the start it was hard to predict what these changes would mean. Here in Rome, we were all used to life revolving around districts, let alone at a city level, and even Italian national unity has been hard won, and not always successful. But thanks to God, we have understood it was the right way to go.
Devo dire che ringraziamo Dio di aver capito che questa era la strada in cui dovevamo metterci.
In 1957, the Treaty of Rome set up the common market. Is this still a valid policy, or do we risk disaster faced with financial crisis and a globalizing world?
In my opinion, this policy is the right one, because division allowed some nations to prosper, but suffocated others. That's why we had to find some sort of enlightened policy, and that's what we did.
Il 10 giugno, per la prima volta nella storia, 180 milioni di europei di 9 paesi eleggeranno insieme il Parlamento europeo.
Giugno 1979, la prima elezione del Parlamento europeo.
In June 1979, the European Parliament was directly elected for the first time, with one citizen, one vote electing members. 30 years on, Brussels and Strasbourg are seen as aloof and useless. Why?
Perché?
Because we still have to overcome the tradition of individual, national or regional interests dominating. I don't want to blow my or my colleagues' own trumpets, but important steps have been taken up to now, proving the original project was a valid one and hasn't dated.
Il disegno iniziale si è dimostrato valido, non era un disegno velleitario.
Dicembre 1991, il trattato.
The Maastricht Treaty of December 1991 created the European Union. You as a senator signed for Italy. Were you too idealistic at the time, or did you ruin everything afterwards?
It's still a work in progress. Perhaps what we should be doing is trying to help young people understand that this is the future. We mustn't look back thinking that things were better in the past.
In May 2004, the 15-member Europe became 25, then in January 2007, a 27-member union with the arrival of Romania and Bulgaria. Do you think there's room in Europe for other members?
What we've done until now is remarkable, but much important work remains to be done. As we near the final objective, we are starting to run out of steam, and progress becomes difficult.
There are other countries that want to join the EU, but do you think some should be excluded outright?
The European ideal was an affair of the heart, as much as it was convictions based on hard facts. I think we've taken the right road, and time will help us to consolidate this unity and overcome regional interests.
Il tempo aiuterà a consolidare questo movimento unitario e a superare quelli che sono dei particolarismi.
In May 2005, France and the Netherlands rejected the European Constitution in referendum votes. Was this a good thing in the end?
Maybe European hearts and minds weren't ready to take such a detailed decision. There were a lot of prejudices and many errors. So that's why I think the whole thing was a little bit hurried. And that was a mistake.
Quindi credo che probabilmente aver accelerato i tempi sia stato forse un errore.
Nel 1984,
In 1984, at a Communist Party rally, you said that the two Germanys should remain separated. Have you ever regretted thinking that?
Maybe I regretted saying it, because there are some things you should think, but not say out loud. But I was convinced of it.
Helmut Kohl never forgave you.
Maybe he needs a few more years of patience.
When Margaret Thatcher was critical of you, was it you or Italy itself the target?
Mrs. Thatcher was highly intelligent and capable of finesse, but with an authoritarian character. It wasn't easy to sit at a table with her.
Do you think Europe has an immigration policy?
I would say that Europe lacks a well-structured and programmed immigration policy, but the movement that will bring about adequate solutions is on the march. And it's inevitable that it will win.
Turning back boatloads of illegal immigrants, as the Italian government does, is abusive or necessary?
These sorts of things don't give you time to think. But they are necessary choices to discourage the increase of similar attempts.
Italy has had to deal with the mafia for years, but now it's faced with several organizations. Do you think this is a European question? What advice would you give to those tackling organized crime in Brussels?
In my opinion, Europe is a movement that can't expect to be perfect straight away. But it should seek to harness the skills of everyone and get the best out of everything at the same time as it corrects the faults. It's not easy, but we have to do it. It's a moral obligation for the future generations to get this right and not go astray.
Obbligo, vorrei dire anche morale nei confronti delle generazioni future di non sbagliare strada.
Senator, since 1992 you've had no governmental position. One of your famous sayings is power wears out those without it. Do you feel worn out?
I consider myself as one of the people of Rome, not as someone who's been committed to great projects, but I do think that elements of those great projects can be forged on the margins as well, and that was my case.
Senator, are you afraid of death?
Certainly. It doesn't make me jump for joy, that's for sure. I try to think about it as little as possible.
So what are your targets for the next 90 years?
I think the best thing is not to think about death, but you mustn't think about being immortal either.
Di non ridursi nemmeno di essere immortale.
La ringrazio, senatore.
Prego. Bene.